So as you move up that layer, a developer's like, wait a minute, what code should I learn? Right?
Yeah.
Like, so what business problem are you trying to solve? That's my response back, because it may have been built in a third-party code. You might not want to learn that. So learn how to interoperate in things like cloud technology with integration suites and doing things with BTP or something else like it, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I know that there's an SAP store out there that allows people to go and build applications and put out a best-in-class application. And other people might use that and subscribe to it. And so there's a whole area where people are building stuff that you can learn from, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so when you're going to learn that code base, I don't think it's as important what code you learn. If you're a Java developer, that's a great skill to have. If you do front-end design and you learn our UI5, now you're understanding a framework that allows you to talk to a back-end SAP system. You're optimized, you're ready to go. It's not just about Fiori and designing tiles. It's about getting that data out. So I can take you literally, Sean, I can talk for an hour straight about all these different choices, because there's no right answer. I mean, this is a really complex space.
Thanks so much for joining another edition of The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement for companies running SAP. If you run SAP, you know what ADAP is, or at least you've probably heard of it. And ADAP is not the only name in the game. Right now, we have the pleasure of Josh Bentley. Josh is absolutely famous. He shows up with some fantastic color in his beard. He's a developer advocate from SAP. He's got years of experience in SAP and non-SAP development, open source, not open source. And we have the pleasure of Josh joining us today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Sean. And as you know, I walk down the hallway in Newtown Square sometimes, not even knowing you're going to be there. And then I see a familiar face, and I'm used to being recognized now for this. It is a little odd for me to always know that I'm easy to pick out in the crowd, and I forget I have it. And I'll be walking around and I'm thinking, hey, that person's really making eyes. Oh, it's my beard. So anyway, it's good to see you again. Not in person this time, but I know I saw you a few times in Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, where I'm based recently. So that's always a pleasure.
Likewise, Josh, it's always fun. What I would love to be able to share is, getting into a conversation around the three legs of this stool, this concept of like, how did you get to be a developer advocate? And I love watching a young man come up to you and basically say like, how do I do what you do? Because you've got this mixture of technical expertise with enough sort of personality and personability to get out there and share it and leave the world a better place. And to me, that's all about that never-ending climb of leaving the world a better place than you found it.
Yeah, for sure. And I get touched when people come up to me and they recognize me, or they ask me how I did what I did, how I became what I became. And it's an answer that I give in speeches a lot, which is, what code should I learn? Or how do I get a job like you? And just wanting it and desiring it is not enough. It comes, unfortunately, this beard is covering some gray hair, and it comes with a few decades of experience. And that experience, I find developer advocates are one of two types mostly. They are people that want to make their career, and they're young, starting out, maybe just out of university. They love a certain style of code. They care about programming and developing, and they want to get out there. They built some apps, maybe. They started a startup, and they sold it. And they come in with that expertise as credibility. And that's the word really that makes a developer advocate important, is their credibility. They have to know what they're talking about. Otherwise, it takes years and years of experience. I've done things from infrastructure, telecom, moved my way up to become a solution engineer, went out and presented to customers over and over and over. And that's that sharpening of the axe, right? And so now I can get in a room and not be uncomfortable. And I had some really bad demos in my past. We could talk about those later or now, whatever. But I've had times where it was an embarrassing demo, but it's not the end of the world. You walk out, you learn from it, and you do it again. And it's hard standing in a hallway to explain, hey, I'm a guy that really understands open source technology, which a lot of people at SAP don't. I'm also an infrastructure telecom guy. I helped, run BlackBerry servers when they were a thing. And you being in Canada, I'm sure that's a good one. But yeah, you take that combination of being there during the transition of that time in 2007 when iPhones and Android phones were first released, in 2010 when the iPad came out, and SAP putting apps onto those devices. I can't say to somebody, go do what I did. It doesn't work like that. So you got to have the third thing, which is the personality. And that's something either I'm lucky enough to have it, or embarrassing enough for my family. I've never met a stranger, right? So.
What I love something that you said there, and I think it's so important, we need to repeat it for everybody, is you put in the work and you didn't let that fear of failure stop you. And I think that is the most beautiful thing, because there's enough folks that are either too scared to start, or they just can't muster the courage to get over that fear. And it's not that you don't have fears, but you have the courage to push through it and let yourself shine out there so that you could go help people and you could grow. And getting on and doing this is easy for you because you've done the work, you put in the reps, and then it gets easy. So yeah, Josh, again, that's amazing. When we were talking, there was a story about how SAP runs SAP.
Mhm.
And I know for our business, we run it on S4, we have BTP, we use BTP, we run our own products. And I find that super gratifying. And it's also why somebody asked me, hey, why don't you do this part of SAP? Or why doesn't your team help her build add-ons for that part? I'm like, well, because we don't run that. We actually run HubSpot. Sorry, dude.
Yeah.
We don't offer that service. I just don't feel good standing behind something when we would lead by it. But SAP does that too. And when you get to help SAP run SAP, you're at the funny end of the spear making it happen. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So back when we started that program, I was in the IT department. I actually wasn't always customer facing. And so I was recruited by the CIO because we had bought Sybase and Cyclo, two companies that had mobile technologies embedded in them to help people get access to their back-end data. And we started doing mobile device management. And so, as I mentioned with the BlackBerries, then the transition to other devices, we had to come up with standards and practices to allow you to use these mobile devices to access your SAP data. And one of the cool phrases that my CIO used was make it as easy as email. Everything we open to talk to the SAP system should be as easy as sending and receiving an email. And that's a big challenge, actually, because all the processes that go into making email consistent and secure had to be then transitioned to the mentality of opening up and doing something for procurement. Or what are we doing with the SAP system on the back end that may be a complex set of requirements and RBAC, and your role doesn't allow you to do that. So what we found out was, let's start with form-based applications. They are the field worker easy applications. And we internally do the same thing. Like, okay, we have a Salesforce. They want to look at their numbers. Pretty easy to figure out what they're looking for. They're looking for data, business analytics that show them where they are in the market with their sales. And so that was one of the first things we had to figure out was, how do we expose sales data securely to a bunch of sales guys in the field? And then the other side of that was, what about just requesting a day off, getting approval? But here's the real secret. I know this because I was part of the team. The first app we launched was what's to eat in the Waldorf cafeteria, in the canteen. So as a workforce of tens of thousands of people in that headquarters in Germany, they not only wanted to know the volume of people that were in each canteen, they wanted to know what was for lunch today and where would I go to get it. And so that was the first application that was built, was a actual lunch application to start seeing, hey, what are you going to go eat today?
Yeah. What kind of cake can I go find in there if I'm going to visit it? That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
exactly.
So when you're thinking about the programs that you run as developer advocate, I know that you get a mix of people that show up. There's the folks that they're there. You can tell they're ready. They're locked in. They're paying attention. They're in the zone. And they know their password. They've got the stuff ready. And then there's the people that kind of show up. Well, you just know they're just taking an afternoon at work. How do you engage with them? And what advice would you have for the people that sometimes they need to balance and work with some of their peers that are kind of along for the ride instead of hitting their stride?
So it's really interesting you bring that up. Thank you for bringing up code jams, because that is one of the things that developer advocates do besides working our Tech Ed show, which is our annual technical conference. We're really out there doing not only the code jams for us to showcase our technology, we're doing it to get the customers into the room for free education, because we don't charge for what we do and we're not tied to a sales cycle. So what's cool is we automatically come in with more credibility, and no offense to those who are showing up to try to be part of a sales cycle, but they know I'm trying to say, use this, because if you use this, you'll get a better deal on this function. I'm trying to say, look, in your job role, it's important enough for you to come in here and sit down for 6 hours today. And yes, you want the free lunch or the coffee and donuts, whatever. But we don't market it as a food event. We don't market it as come get free lunch. We just know that some people are there because they don't want to be at their day job that day. But they do have an SAP account. They do use our code. And they go to a partner and maybe they built some combination of something that uses a third-party thing like Salesforce or whatever. Like we don't own the CRM space completely. There's other people out there like Workday doing HR and human resource management. Those things have to come then though and talk to SAP data at some point. Maybe it's for payroll. Maybe it's for when you start your job and you have to get your desk assignment and the facilities management, because SAP touches so many things. And some of these developers have to take care of that. And they go, what do you mean I have to use BTP to authenticate against these other third-party systems? How would I even imagine doing that? I'm an SAP ABAP basis admin. And I get them in the room. I'm like, well, you're not really going to understand open source schema on top of Kubernetes with our Gardener system that's spinning up containerized applications. And they look, yeah, Gesundheit, right? I just made up all those words. So it's winning them over as we're there for them. Like if anything, like I still am touched and honored that they not only want to come up and ask for a selfie, but they come into the room and give us their time. And that's what's really special about being a developer advocate, is that we get to go out as the tip of the spear and establish a conversation before someone from our company is going to come in and do a pre-sales demonstration and say, we know that you are in this market, and it's very important before you start building applications and rolling them out to your workforce that you understand this code. Oh, I saw Josh talk about that. He came out a few weeks ago and we did a lunch and learn. So
yeah, that idea of why it matters. And I think that's probably a good way to get into it, because there's a lot of folks that are out there that are like, oh, that's dead. And you kind of go, well, actually, the programming language is not dead. The whole SAP NetWeaver stack is still built on HANA. And so there's no way that that's dead. But can you help with where somebody only knows that one language and they've watched it evolve over the years, but when they only know that one thing, what are you seeing people needing to open up to demonstrate some curiosity to, or to open up the possibility to start to engage and head out on that journey, as opposed to getting stuck in the, no, I'm going back home, I'm writing a Cormon?
So that's a loaded question because it ties into one I get a lot, which is which code should I learn? So that's usually the younger audience comes up to us and says, what code should I learn? And I've learned now that I have to answer that a different way based on the region. So if I'm in certain regions, it's which one's going to pay the most money. And I said, so you'll go to work and you'll be miserable working in a code base just because it makes more. Yep. Okay, well then whatever I say to you really doesn't matter, because that's all you care about. Go Google it and find out the top paying job. But if you want to understand a code base and you want to make impact for business users, because everybody's a business user in the end, they're using applications to do something, unless you're playing a game, right? Oh, wait a minute, there's in-app purchases. They're trying to sell you stuff too. Like everything's about consumerization of a lot of these applications. And it's, well, how does my code base make that app work? And if they just peel the onion a little bit and they realize, oh, it's all connected to each other through these cloud-based applications now. It's not the old R3 stack. And you mentioned NetWeaver, right? I didn't know, we call it Neo Cloud. Neo Cloud is out there. I didn't know that was for NetWeaver operations, right? So I learned all this through SAP by being parallel to it, because again, I was not an ABAPer. I'm not a HANA guy. I know it. I work closely with that team, but when I now give a talk on which runtime should I use, it's really cool because we're talking about ABAP, the steampunk stuff, right next to me talking about the open source running on top of the Kima runtime. And then we've got the third set, which is the Cloud Foundry, which is people that need more of these toolkits to kind of optimize how they build on top of the cloud. Again, it all comes back to the cloud. And why is it the cloud? Because nobody can run a data center as best as the data center operators. We know that. So we partner with them. And that's where the hyperscaler stuff comes in. And we say, we're going to run a layer. And you get into the IaaS and the PaaS and the SaaS and all these ASs. And what we're getting. Yeah, exactly. So as you move up that layer, a developer's like, wait a minute, what code should I learn? Right?
Yeah.
Like, so what business problem are you trying to solve? That's my response back, because it may have been built in a third-party code. You might not want to learn that. So learn how to interoperate in things like cloud technology with integration suites and doing things with BTP or something else like it, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I know that there's an SAP store out there that allows people to go and build applications and put out a best-in-class application. And other people might use that and subscribe to it. And so there's a whole area where people are building stuff that you can learn from, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so when you're going to learn that code base, I don't think it's as important what code you learn. If you're a Java developer, that's a great skill to have. If you do front-end design and you learn our UI5, now you're understanding a framework that allows you to talk to a back-end SAP system. You're optimized, you're ready to go. It's not just about Fiori and designing tiles. It's about getting that data out. So I can take you literally, Sean, I can talk for an hour straight about all these different choices because there's no right answer. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
really complex space.
Yeah. This is the quintessential example of analysis paralysis could freeze you where you are while somebody tries to make the perfect decision. And I
Yeah.
think you nailed it. Like the best developers don't sit down and just write code. They copy and paste it. And if they could buy something that gets them 80%, 90% of the way there, and then they're worried about the last bit, that tends to be the right decision because it shortens the time of value. And, we were talking about what a CIO values. Can you get into why shorten time to value, lower risk, lower cost? If somebody was going to build it like, oh, this is going to be 5,000 hours of developer job. This is going to be great. We're going to be at this for the next 2 years. And if there's a large systems integrator, they're probably like, woo. And then why? Especially if you could just buy it. How can you talk through for like in developer language why that matters so much to the organization and for their career to understand why that matters?
I'm still hearing the echo of that sound. It was like the Calgary Stampede, that woo-wee. So,
Bah, bah, bah.
um, when a developer is approached by a CIO and or, maybe it's going through the layers of different people within their organization, and the idea is, I want to do this. I want to go to market with something within our company, and I want to get this into the hands of all of our customers. I want them to use something to then buy from the customer of SAP. So a developer is probably looking at this saying, well, I've been working in my single stack. I'm a full stack developer, and I've made you an application, and a couple of other customizations have come in and talked to that backend system. So if they're an ABAP basis admin, they know their space, but the company might be selling chocolate, right? What does basis admin have to do with chocolate? Well, it's raw ingredients, right? They may be saying, how much sugar do we need? How much cocoa do we need? So they have to buy and sell. They have to buy the raw ingredients. They have to manufacture them. Oh, now you're getting into asset management. So that single stack developer isn't realizing how many things that their company is touching outside of their job function. So then we get into a development style. So there used to be this whole talk, people go on for hours about waterfall versus, are you doing, scrum cycles? And the idea is you just need to do rapid iteration. I don't care how you do it because the cloud will blow you away. And cloud development and cloud updates, they're in a public cloud space. They're frictionless. The user should not feel them. The advantage is all the updates, all the patches, they go in there once a week, once a month, whatever the release cycle is. If you're a developer who's in the back office and built a homegrown solution, not only do you have to worry about them getting hit by a bus, right? Because then you lose all of your maintenance of your systems. Their knowledge transfer, their business continuity that's tied to that old style is not going to be able to keep up in the market when somebody says, you guys make chocolate, well, we do too, and we use these systems to do it that are all greenfield, they're not brownfield. So everything that I just mentioned is like this all-encompassing, I just want to write a few lines of code that I stick into an application, but now it's outdated because you guys tied it to a cloud that's not outdated. So how do I fit all those together? And that's that hybrid space. That is, you are a developer at your company building a solution for proprietary backend access. You're talking to SAP data. You're a named SAP user probably. But if you're going to talk to third-party systems, you've got to integrate in some way. And all of this is very complex, and it's got to be maintained. It's got to be documented. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but it just shows you the space is not simple.
Yeah, it's not simple. Don't let analysis paralysis stop you. Chances are, if you could buy it instead of building it, one of my favorite ones was, oh yeah, it'll be faster for us to build it ourselves, less expensive, etc. And you look at it, you kind of think about that picture where the guy's holding up a picture of the unicorn with somebody riding in a spear, and then you got like this crayon drawing tattooed on the poor guy's back. That kind of idea of there's always something that can do cheaper. And then
Well, I would
there's
tell the audience to go look up the one where it's the person is asked to build a swing, and it's the different interpretations based on it being product management, engineering, the user.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, the tire swing helmet is so true. Especially when you get into this is all I need to do. And you look at the requirements right now without evaluating kind of directionally where that goes, that can very quickly create the conditions where you're in a, unfortunately, never-ending development cycle of then the thing that you've got to maintain. And that's, I think, one of the components as developers I'm hearing you implore when teams are out there to make sure what you're building is more supportable, more upgradable, and less custom. And I think that's part of the responsibility that we all have to our companies. And
Yeah,
I
there's
really,
the chef on the Food Network years ago, Alton Brown. I don't know if you know him, and he's from Atlanta, where I grew up. And his thing was, I don't want to have a unitasker in the kitchen. I don't want to have a single thing that is built to do one thing for one cuisine I'm cooking. It should be able to do more than one function. And that's kind of the idea, is if you're going to be using something like an SAP system, and a partner comes to you and says, well, you're attaching to these three other systems, we can help you connect those all together with this platform in the middle, BTP, and now you've got the ability to then do 6 other functions you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. You would have had to build a single application. Look, there's nothing wrong with building a single app, especially in the mobile space. One app might be all you need to power your company. But what if you want to do 2? You got to copy that infrastructure. You got to copy that deployment plan. That's
yeah,
when it starts to really just become, you're hamstringing yourself by building it yourself. If you're not going to go to market with more than one thing, I don't know.
yeah. And I often consider this to be the difference between a very small business or a personal project and enterprise grade, right? And
Yeah.
enterprise grade implies and requires mandates, scale, and security and responsibility and that kind of thing. And I think that's probably one of the things where people get frustrated with how long some things can take, but you can do it quickly in the right context.
Mhm.
Sometimes the first one takes a little longer and then you go way faster. And
Yeah.
I love watching organizations that go through the work to set up the first piece well so that they can scale. I know that's part of what you end up teaching at these bootcamps, to go and help think about quality development, doing things in a repeatable way so that we're a dry code. You don't repeat yourself.
I mean, look, if you can't admit your mistakes, that's going to be a problem. So you have to do that often. And
Yeah.
it's, there's no wrong time. There's no stupid questions, but there's stupid times to ask them. But there's no wrong time to raise your hand and say, I'm responsible for this. I need your help fixing it. Nora on our team is brilliant. She's one of the experts we have in the AI space. And I don't know if you've heard of AI, but it's getting popular.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
Exactly. But Nora gives an anecdote about, she spent hours looking for a semicolon. It was in the wrong spot, and it was for like a thesis demonstration. And so it's really so much stress can come down to just being like, I need another set of eyeballs. I cannot keep searching for why my app is not working. And we can debug all day. We can ask AI to help, but if AI doesn't know why you're asking it to help, like, you need to have a development set of expertise based in your space and what you're doing, so that you speak the language of your users, your colleagues. Otherwise, it's going to be like, I've been in the room before where I've tried to talk to some sales guys at SAP, and they just looked at me and said, everything you're saying applies, but not to this audience. You need no acronyms, full words when you speak in a sentence. So you have to know your audience is the point.
Know your audience is absolutely critical. Maybe that's a great spot to kind of land the plane. There's a lot of angst out there from developers, and there's this vibe of like, why are you making me change? I got 4 years before I retire. This ABAP thing has been a great career. What is going on? I like the ABAP I wrote 15 years ago, but it doesn't mean ABAP's going away. It just means the world around us is changing, and business needs to move faster than we used to be able to write ABAP. What would you share with somebody who's feeling that sense of, oh my God, the world's changing around me, or why do I need to change?
Yeah, the first is, don't panic. It's not going anywhere. It's like, you have a job and you are doing something that you have not only poured your love into and your time and your effort, people are using it. But somebody is going to say, you might retire someday. You might get a new role that you care more about. You might be energized about something else, and then somebody has to maintain what you built. So I would look for security first. Like, that is my number one. Any app that is built should always look at security first. And then it should look at reliability. It needs to work all the time, every time. And then repeatability. Like, how do we do it again? How do we add other things? So if you think those 3 things are not on the top of mind for you, then you need to reevaluate what you're doing. Because if you can't secure your application, if you can't make it something that's going to work, and if you can't make it repeatable, how do you give that over to your team if you do transition to somewhere else? And if you want to stay put, maybe take those practices towards building a better version on a cloud, on a hybrid model. And that's why we released 2 different versions of Steampunk, right? So we took ABAP and put it into the cloud, and we let you get that through BTP. But if you're in S4 and you just want to stay in the S4 space because you've been on this migration from an R3 system and you're ECC 6, and like, I don't want to change my ABAP code, well, look at how we're deploying it into the cloud. See if the functions we pre-built and the things that we're allowing you to do that are gated, for lack of a better term, from you getting into a space you shouldn't get into, and then reuse that ABAP code. And now your users are going to get more reliability. I don't know if you've ever looked at how long it takes them as a phone to connect to something, and the tolerance level to watch a YouTube video versus perform an SAP function, they're not much different. If I can't open up my code and get it to execute, I'm going to hang up, I'm going to disconnect, I'm going to go somewhere else and find a way to solve that problem. So the developers need to be thinking about that, their users, and put them into their space.
That word that comes to mind listening to you describe that was empathy. Number one, you started with empathy for how people are feeling when they're looking at that. Number two, you brought back to empathy for the people who need to use the solution. And I would invite folks to consider that it is very difficult to go wrong by bringing that empathy for both how the team is feeling and how the people are going to feel when they're using the solution. So, Josh, so grateful for you joining, and I wish you all the best. I hope everybody has taken a whole bunch of value out of this. I hope you will see us again next week. Thank you for joining another edition of the Never Ending Climb for companies that are running SAP that want a stronger supply chain, a stronger procurement. Thanks, everybody.